Good evening, Saints. So good to be with you here from the River City, San Antonio, with my dear brother, Henry Porter. And we'll be touching on part 2 of the message on participating in God's humanity. Now, want to apologize for this past Sunday, because I know some of you are probably thinking, well, what happened to part 1? We had some bad weather, and it knocked out our streaming, and even messed up in our homes. They had to come out and check everything. So we're back on again, and again, apologize for any inconvenience. Of course, Big Al was asking where we were. We're right here, but nothing was happening as far as streaming. So I'll try to, kind of bring you up to speed on part 1. But before I do that, I want to make a quick announcement. This coming Sunday, the 15th at 6:30 to 9, we're having our second youth worship night, all right, here at Church of Acts. So if you have any teenagers, young adults, invite them over here to Church of Acts. It's not about Church of Acts. It's just about our youth coming together as one. That, sad to say, sometimes adults have that problem. They don't. So we had an exciting time on the first one. Of course, that's what I was told. I didn't come. I know they didn't want to see somebody my age around there. So it's just the youth. So again, our second youth worship night, 6:30 to 9 on this coming Sunday, the 15th. Okay? Hope you all can make it and have another great time of worship in the Lord. All right, as I said, this past Sunday morning, the theme, the topic, the title was participating in God's humanity. Now, let me explain real quick. We know He's God, the triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit, but we have a tendency to just kind of look at that view of God and that alone. But the incarnation was not a one-time event. In fact, the incarnation, we're still basking in that glory, in that union, in that love, and in that life. I want you to understand that. I'm going to say that again. The very life in the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, you and I are equally invited to be in that circle. It's not a different one. They change not. Same yesterday, today, and forever. But we have been included in that love triangle. And now, as we'll read here in a minute, in Romans chapter 8, that we are invited into that life. Now, I want you to understand this. John G. Lake quoted something. I'm going to give this later, but I'll give it now. Do not imprison Christ in you. Did you hear that? John G. Lake, a man of oh my goodness, the topic of the whole legacy of John G. Lake is amazing. In the time of the bubonic plague, people were dying by the thousands. And they had warned him that he should stay away like everybody else, or else this thing was going to overcome him as well. And he actually asked them to put a drop of that plague in the palm of his hand. And they were looking at it through a scope, and they found that disease just dissolved on his skin. Never penetrated, did nothing. But John G. Lake was living by the principle or the law of Romans 8:2, the law of the Spirit of life. And the other law is the spirit of sin and death. A simple question. What do you choose to live by? Your choice. God's already granted it to us, the same life that the Father and Son had and Spirit. We've been invited into that circle of life. We'll be sharing that tonight. But again, he said, do not imprison Christ in you. Let him live in you. Let him manifest himself in you. And once the body of Christ comes to the full understanding of that divine compassion of the Son of God, this world will never be the same again. So think about that. You're not just alive. You do not just have the breath of God in your lungs. You have the same life that's in the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Why do you think Psalms 115, verse 16 states that he has given the earth to the children of men? Was Jesus praying or teaching the disciples to pray in Matthew 6:9? Our Father, let your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So as what God is in the heavens, he's granted unto us on the earth, but with the same life. Now, I understand I'm a Christian, I'm born again, I have the Spirit of God, I go to church, I have this gift, this anointing, this calling. I understand that. But first and foremost, the same life that comes from the Trinity, that the Son has manifested, declared the Father, lives in you. Let's start off tonight in Matthew 16:13. You know, it's awesome. Like when I start hearing or feeding a certain topic, I can go to different verses that I've gone through hundreds of times. But because of the topic, it just seems like they're enlightened even that much more in my spirit. So I've read these verses as Brother Henry, but now that we're on the topic of being able to participate in God's humanity, not just his deity, but in his humanity, these verses mean so much more. So I began to think about Peter. When the Lord asked the warm-up question, what are they saying about me out there? And then, of course, the answer, well, Lord, some say this, some say that. I said, okay, put that aside. Now, you are my disciples. You are the ones that are following me, that are experiencing everything that you see with me every single day. So now my question is this: who do you say that I am? Matthew 16, let's start there in, 13. So, Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, and he asked the disciples, saying, who do men say that I am the Son of Man? So they said, some say John the Baptist, Elijah, others Jeremiah, one of the prophets. He says to them, but who do you say that I am? Look at verse 16. Simon Peter answered and said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now watch this at verse 17. He answered and said to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah. Now catch this. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. Jesus was in celebration. He was in such a joy. I can't find a word of how impacted that he was, that the Father had revealed to Peter, that's the Christ, the Son of the living God. But notice, no man no flesh and blood could have revealed this to you, Peter. Only my Father which is in heaven. So the Lord goes on and speaks about the things that are to come, the things they have to go and suffer through all the religious leaders and everything else. But it said that from that time, he started to tell them of all that he had to endure. Now watch. I want you to catch this. The life of the Father, the very life of the Father was in the Son. Fully deity, fully God, fully humanity, fully man. He's the God man. He's the man God. You've got to understand that. He never decreased in his deity, never increased in his humanity. He came in likeness of sinful flesh. You must understand that. Romans 8:3, 2 Corinthians 5:21. Why is that important? Because of this truth, because of this revelation, God can never, ever be separate from humanity. Came in to humanity with full deity, but yet full human. That's incredible. And again, we'll look at the incarnation and we'll converse about it as if it was a one-time thing. Look, my friend, the breath that's in your lungs is because of the incarnate one. He's made it possible for you and I to live the same life that was in Jesus. You and I are experiencing right now, whether you know it or you believe it or not. Now, as we look at this, understand this. Again, God can never separate himself from humanity. There's no way. He made it to be that way. We are his family. Jesus introduced him there in Matthew 6:9 as our Father. So through the incarnation, humanity will always be the family of God. That's how powerful the incarnate one has made it to be. So understand, Peter had no rabbi, had nothing, was not, looking at the scriptures in the synagogue and said, wow, are you the Christ? No, the Father revealed to him. And we're going to see here in a minute that the only one that has ever manifested the Father, has declared him, is the Son. No one else can do it. So now, again, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father which is in heaven. We hear people say, well, just pray this prayer. Look, saints, there is no prayer. No written prayer, no oral prayer that'll reveal to you the Son, Father, and Spirit. Memorize any prayer you want that does not give you the clarity of who you're praying unto. But to know the Father, you must go through the Son. Now I'll show you here in a minute in Matthew, because he is in the bosom of the Father. Now, let's look at Matthew 17 real quick. Right there in Matthew 16. Now drop down. Let's just start there in verse 1 just to be safe. Everybody with me? After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, John, his brother, led them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun. His clothes became as white as the light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, Moses, and Elijah. Look at verse 5. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. Suddenly a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." In other words, Moses the lawgiver, Elijah, the mouth of the prophets, he's saying, don't listen to the law, nor to the prophets. In other words, Moses being the lawgiver, remember what Matthew 5:17 says, don't think I've come to destroy the law, but rather to fulfill the law and the prophets. So Moses is the lawgiver. He's right there. Elijah, the mouth of the prophets, you have them both, law and prophets. He said, I've come to fulfill them both. So in other words, regardless of how long you were to follow the law or the words of the prophets, what does it say in Hebrews 1:1? God, who in sundry times and divers manners spoke to our fathers in times past through the prophets, but has in these last days spoken to us through his Son. So the Father says, this is my beloved Son. Hear him. Because the law can never manifest the Father. The prophets cannot manifest the Father. What do you say in Hebrews 10:1? The law was but a shadow of the good things to come, but not the very image itself. Hebrews 1:3, he is the express image of the Father. So we've got to understand all of these truths. So he says, this is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. In other words, I'm not pleased with the law. I'm not pleased with the prophets, because they can only give you pieces, shadows, types, pictures. But my Son has declared me. He has manifested me. Therefore, there's no way you can come to the Father without coming through the Son. Simple as that. Simple as that. So again, Matthew 5:17, think not that I came to destroy, but to fulfill. Saints, look, we do not live under any old covenant. Jesus made it very clear. He says, look, in Matthew 26, this is my body, my blood. There at the Last Supper. And this blood is representing the new covenant. Now, I've told you before, the covenant between the Father and the Son. That's the covenant we are under, we are in, because it's unshakable, unbreakable. It's the Father and Son. And those two, unchangeable, they're set. I mean, from eternity, the two are one. And we've got to understand that because of that covenant, you and I are now under grace to grace. Now, watch this. Again, Hebrews 10:1, the law was but a shadow, not the image. I see people today, how can I don't want to offend anybody, but we do not need to add anything to that oneness that we have with the triune God. You don't need an instrument. You don't need something in your hand, something on your head, on your shoulders, to wear a particular garment. Look, if the Son is not enough, they never will be in your life. Somewhere you're tweaking what the truth is declaring. If you've seen my Son, you've seen me, because we're one. That's the oneness that you and I have. And again, we'll look at other different religions that are bound to idols and things of that nature. But you know what? I've seen people in Christianity that are just as bound with certain articles, uh, certain postures that they feel they have to take on to pray or to spend time with God, or just be flat on your face because of His holiness. He wants you to walk in relation to the same life that the Son lived on this earth 33 years. And He wants that for you and I to experience now. It's not like you're going to finally get home when you go to heaven. Heaven is here and now through Jesus. Whether He was in the bosom of the Father or on the earth manifesting for 33 years, He was always the same. Therefore, Peter says, let's make 3 tabernacles. You see how quickly we get into an idolatrous way. We have people that have certain articles. Now, I'm not saying if you're wearing a cross, pull it off and throw it away. No. Wear your cross. That's fine. But what I'm saying is that there's people that if they're not being able to indulge in something physical, something tangible, they don't feel like they have freedom. How much more tangible can God become through His Son? And we're in oneness with Him. So, understand now, through Jesus, all things can now be interpreted. He is the perfect image, and He is the perfect interpretation of the Father and the Spirit. Now, John takes up 3 chapters, John 14, 15, and 16, to introduce the Parakletos, to introduce Holy Spirit, which is, and only Jesus called Him, the Spirit of truth. 2 things. He said He'll bring all things to your remembrance, and He will also teach you all truths. So be careful on what you're listening to. If in any way, shape, or form contradicts Scripture, I would warn you of what you are listening to or who you are listening unto. Jesus is the manifestation of the triune God here on this earth. Now, I want you to watch this with me. John 1:16. Now, I told you on Sunday, well, of course, you weren't able to hear it, but understand this. The reason why Jesus is called our Redeemer is because you look at every portion of His being, every part of His life, from His origin, being birthed by a virgin, as a child growing up in favor with God and man, at age 12, saying that He was about His Father's business, at age 30, at the baptism, entering into the ministry, and then in Matthew, it talks about His death and resurrection. So in every different area, He was there and existed and manifested as a man. This is why He's our Redeemer. He can redeem any area of your life because He's come in human flesh just as you. He can take you back to any part of your life and bring healing and encouragement that he's never, ever been separate from you. Now, I talked about the book of Ruth, chapter 4, verse 4, the Goel. 3 things about the Goel: the near kinsman redeemer. The nearest of kin in a family, there was death, somebody lost their inheritance. The only one that could be the near kinsman redeemer was the nearest of kin. Did you catch that? Your nearest kin is Jesus. I come from a family of 10. None of them are my kinsman redeemer. Only Jesus. Secondly, they had to be willing to take on that particular thing to redeem. And thirdly, they had to have the worth. If that inheritance that they were going to redeem was worth so much, they had to be over and above what that was worth. So you look at Jesus, the Goel, our near kinsman redeemer, filled every single area of those 3. Our nearest kinsman was willing. I mean, come on. He became flesh. And oh, the heaven, yea, heavens of the Lord's. Boy, did he have the worth. So with that, I want you to catch this. John 1:16. And of his fullness, we have all received grace for grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Again, the law could not give you anything but bring you into a fear, a bondage that maybe you haven't done enough, haven't prayed enough, haven't given enough, all those lawish ways. But notice that the law did not give grace and truth, which came through Jesus Christ. No one, I want you to catch this, no one has seen God at any time. Well, what about Moses on the mount? The burning bush, the voice, I am that I am. All these different experiences that people had. Moses on Mount Sinai. Lord, let me see your glory. I'm going to put you on this rock. Jesus is the rock. And when I pass by, you'll see my back parts. Saints, no one has ever seen the Father. Now, notice, no one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who's in the bosom of the Father, he has manifested him. Didn't Jesus say the statement, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father? For the Father and I are one. And that same life that exists between the Father and Son, you and I have been invited to. That's why John G. Lake said, look, do not imprison Christ in you. He wants to manifest the same way the Father wanted to manifest in the Son. He now is wanting to use you and I, that others may come to know the Father through the Son that has granted us salvation. So now, mankind cannot know the Father. Look at all the Old Testament. They never knew the Father. They'd heard about God, had seen God do certain things, but no one knew him. Only the Son. So listen, there's absolutely no way that God the Father could ever separate with his family, you and I, humanity. because of the incarnation. God became man. That man was God. 100% deity, 100% human. Bringing us that oneness of the Father, Son, and Spirit. So that sharing, that loving, that merciful, that gracious circle of Father, Son, and Spirit, now you and I live in. Therefore, we have no excuse why we cannot love a certain person. You're in that unity. You're in that circle of life. So again, do not imprison him. I mean, he's risen from the dead, and you don't let him rise within you? All right, let me finish so I can give Henry ample time. So again, saints, hear me out. The incarnation, I like what Ryan says. The incarnation, God becoming man, was never, ever plan B. It was always in the heart of the Father, Son, and Spirit. It's not like they're seeing mankind fill the earth and say, oh, wow, Houston, we got a problem. No. God already knew. He'd make man in his likeness and image, and that man would fail. So the incarnation has always been. That of the incarnation, God becoming man, is from eternity. Did not catch God offside. Wow, didn't see that coming. Did you, son? No, Dad. Come on, people. Wake up. So, understand this. Let him live. Understand. Look at the vastness of the oceans, the miraculous mountains, everything else. And he specifically chose to dwell in you. Call it church, call it Christianity, call it born again, call it what you want. I'm calling it the truth. God became man. That man was God. And he's wanting to share that same union with you and I today. Here's the powerful thing. You have the choice to accept it or reject it. Now, it's true and it's truthful. As he's one with the Father, remember John 14:20, he's also one with us. But you make the choice to live in that union or to try to somehow walk away from it. But see how far you can go. God is so amazing. And yet, as a man, manifesting the Father like nothing else in this earth. Brother Henry?
Yes, sir. You know, in his plan A, Pastor, in the garden, when he created Adam, he breathed in him.
Yep, sure did.
Everything about him. And
Yep.
Adam then was created in the likeness and image of his creator, meaning, therefore, that he wanted him to walk on the earth as God walked on the earth.
Exactly.
And so when he forfeited that, I made a comment the other night, and I said that the byproduct of disobedience was fear. And they went and hid themselves from the creator that created them.
Yep.
So when God came to look for them, where are you? Well, we're hiding. Why are you hiding? Well, because we were afraid. Afraid because we were in a state of nakedness. So that separation then caused the part of Adam being human to lose the part of God. Although that's the mindset that he was walking with, because he had come into agreement with the one that told him, "Oh no, you won't die. You know, it's just you're not going to die. He just doesn't want you to be like him.
Yeah.
And so that whole lie that they bought into it, and we fast forward to, you think about it, but before we fast forward to the New Testament, everything that man did in the Old Testament was staying away. They were afraid of God. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You think about the mountain shaking and everything happening. Human race wanted to stay away from the manifestation of God, and they wanted just a certain amount of people to do that. So you had a certain amount of people that could relate
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to that topic about watching what God is doing. Even the people said, "No, we don't want to go
Yeah.
we don't want to get close to the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
God is there.
That's right.
Moses, you go." And remember, every morning they will watch Moses walk out of his tent, walk through the entire tent city, and end up at the tent of meeting with God. Because they told Moses, "No, you go. We don't want to go." All of humanity wanted to stay away from God, and God was saying, God was trying to invite all of humanity in.
Yeah.
That was his first intent, to be with him at all times. So then comes Christ into the scene, and then you have Christ now becoming man, coming to the earth in the seed of man, but being God on earth. And it would have been unfair for the disciples and unfair for us to do the works of God if Christ was all God and no man.
Yeah. Exactly.
He had to be man in order to show us
Yep.
how to do it. Imagine the disciples walking with Christ, and they saw the man, Christ, do the work. And then they thought, well, we could do that too. Now, the Greek word was when Stephen saw the human one standing next at the right hand of the Father, anthropos.
Mm-hmm.
Anthropos, and when he saw this human being standing next to the Father, this is the human being in heaven.
Yeah. Same flesh.
So right there in flesh. So as Christ walked on the earth, he walked in this anthropos method, which is the human being doing all the works that God had told him to do. So then he demonstrated to the disciples, and the disciples said, if he can do it, we can do it. So then they went ahead and did the same work.
Mm-hmm.
And they came back rejoicing, saying that even the evil spirits, the demons, were subject to them because they were carrying this likeness in them, that they were out there doing the same thing that the human one or the Son of Man was doing. So then it's unique that you have now this whole message that Christ was trying to give man at that moment to the disciples. Whatever I do, you can do also. So as John G. Lake was saying, don't lock him in. Don't imprison what all this power that we're carrying. You know, we have this treasure in earthen vessels.
Yes.
And this thing, it just wants to come out. And so we have to get beyond our little way of thinking that it cannot happen. It can happen. All we do is put it to practice. You know, Pastor was saying earlier, it's not that we have to pray more. We have to fast more. All you got to do is just exercise it more. And the more you exercise it, then he's ready to come out and do what he needs to come out. So in this, when you have this, the concept of this human being that's in heaven, he's in the likeness of us. So how else would he be able to express to the Father what we're going through here on earth, lest we read the principles from Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14. Now we have a high priest that has gone through the heavens and has been touched with every infirmity and everything that we've gone through. And he relays that to the Father. And then the Father feels it and he goes, oh, so that's what they're going through. That's what they're going through. You know, the rebellion in heaven, you know, that kicked off the whole plan of redemption, was that it didn't exist up there. It was processed And then next thing you know it, the rebellion that occurred brought forth then a just a list of things, of byproducts from that rebellion. And we ended up in the rebellion of, or the system of disobedience through Adam, which then produced all of those byproducts that came from the disobedience.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we have one man in the likeness of God. We have this anthropos, this human being that walked with God and was God. And then by his obedience, all of those byproducts were conquered. For he did not give us the spirit of fear, but of love, of power, and of a sound mind. So this human being that walked on the earth recaptured everything
Yeah.
that was stolen from us, from the human race. So his desire was for us to be in likeness of him and to walk with him and be with him and be like him. Now it's been recaptured through Christ. Now this concept of the anthropos, the human being, the one in flesh in heaven, now has given it to us. In Philippians chapter 2 and let me see, verse 7, it says, but about Christ, he said, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men.
Hmm.
It says he came in the likeness of men. That's the word anthropos in the Greek, meaning human being. So the resurrection that occurred was that he didn't resurrect in spirit only. He resurrected in human being, human form. So if he resurrected in human form, then he walked for 40 days and 40 nights in human form. When he ascended in human form also. He didn't leave his body here. He took it's with him. He is the human body. That he took it with him. So then we read in Romans chapter 8 that it states, if that same spirit that raised him from the dead dwells in you, then he will also quicken your human being body.
Mm-hmm.
So we're quickened by the spirit that quickened him to do the
Yep.
work and to walk on this earth in the likeness of man, just a human being, but did all the works that God can do, that God does. And he started walking, demonstrating that to his disciples. For 3.5 years, he demonstrated to them, this is what it's like. Now, you see the story for 3.5 years of Christ, knowing then that you and I have the same ability to do those works. There's something that happened to me years ago, that rattlesnake bite. I'll never forget. After it bit me, I went up to prayer and I talked to the Lord. And then I remember telling the Lord, Pastor, I said, Lord, the Jesus asked me, what do you want to do? And I says, well, I remember in the book of Acts that there was a man by the name of Paul that was picking up firewood. And a viper got a hold of his arm and he shook it off. And nothing happened to him. And my words to the Lord was this: if Paul could do it, I could do it. So I shake off this snake bite or whatever, and nothing's gonna happen to me. Of course, I have to experience my own walk in that particular situation. So I did experience what I experienced, but I'm here even
Mm-hmm.
after that snake bite, because I believed in my heart and in my mind that Paul, being man like human being, I'm being human being, but that spirit in me was the same spirit that was in Paul, was the same spirit that was in Jesus. And I
Yeah.
thought, then if they could do it, I could do it. And then he did say in the Great Commission, in the commissioning of the disciples, he told them, if you pick up any deadly serpent accidentally and it bites you, it's not going to hurt you. You will survive it. So all of those things brought me to this point that has brought me to this point for years now, that in human being, in this human form, the spirit inside of me tells me that Jesus did it, I can do it. So Jesus did it, you can do it. This whole concept of him being human here really revolutionizes now our way of thinking.
Yeah.
That we should not limit our our speech of asking him of being here with us, and doing things that as he did. We have this opportunity now.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to to speak it out and to watch it happen. We we must exercise this. We must put it to work and see him move for us. The world needs to see this.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, Paul said, we have this treasure in earthen vessels. He goes, it's just not just the excellency of words. It's the demonstration of the power of God. Christ did not. He heard what the Father said, and he did it. He obeyed. We have a written form of what he's asking us to do. Jesus had to hear it and do it. A lot of times we criticize our Old Testament saints or our New Testament friends and, people that we hear about that, oh, if I were there, I would not be that way. Oh, come on, give me a break. You would do this. You'd be in the same way of thinking that they were. But because it's written now, we have it in written form. We know the stories. We know everything about the past, about the children of Israel, about everything that God did. But a lot of times, we kind of judge them in an unrighteous manner, in a manner of speaking, because they didn't have it written like we have it. They didn't have the spirit like we had. Remember that one teaching of when Ryan was teaching in discipleship class that in the Old Testament the anointing was upon kings, priests, and prophets. If you were not one of those, you were not anointed. New Testament, we're all anointed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty unique, that he chose us, and Christ was the demonstrator to tell us in human form, I will do all this work so that I can show you that you can do it also. And then we limit ourselves, as Pastor started the comments about John G. Lake, that we imprison Christ. We what keeps us from acting, not just acting, what keeps us from doing the works of the Lord? What keeps us from doing in this human body what he has asked us to accomplish for him? And the greatest miracle, of course, we know the greatest miracle that occurs is salvation upon mankind, the expansion of the kingdom of heaven, the expansion of the kingdom of God. That's what we've been called to do. We've been called to expand the kingdom.
Yeah.
We there's I like what Ryan and Pastor say. There's no escape plan. Don't even think about an escape plan. Do the work. Do the work here. Let's expand the kingdom. Therefore, you want to do it by reading what he did, simply because if he could do it in human form, we could do it in human form. You can do it in human form.
Yeah. Henry, when you were mentioning about how back then they didn't have really the word other than what the prophets had spoken.
Yeah.
And in Luke 4:18, Jesus goes into the synagogue, and to the whole custom of visiting rabbi, they gave him the scroll of Isaiah, and he went to 61, and he said, this, what we're reading here is Isaiah 61, for the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He's reading about exactly who he is. So he was manifesting declaring the words of the prophet. And he said, this day, this has been fulfilled in your ears. That was amazing. Yeah, they're trying to read the scrolls of the prophets, and yet the one that's written of is right there declaring to them who he is. Now, let me leave you with these two examples real quick. In Matthew 11:27. Now watch this. All things have been delivered to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, nor does anyone know the Father except the Son. Now here you and I come in. And to whom the Son wills to reveal him. Did you hear that? We weren't looking for him. Well, let me just make this personal. I wasn't looking for him. Yeah, there's some God up there somewhere doing whatever this God does, but I don't know him. Yet the whole time, even before I was born, it was his will to reveal himself to me through his Son. That is amazing. Now, one more verse. Look at John. I'm sorry, yeah. Where is it here? John 5:22. Now, this speaks so loudly of the incarnation. Listen, for the Father judges no one. Did you catch that? For the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son. That is so powerful. Because of the incarnation, our Redeemer, our near kinsman Redeemer, the Father says, because you've been there, you know what it's like. You've gone into every lie. You've gone into every area that man has ever been deceived in. You've been into every part of darkness, ignorance, rebellion. As the Redeemer, you have all right to redeem everyone because you've gone through what may have judged them and you have set them free, whether they know it or not. Again, John 11:22. I'm sorry, John 5:22. For the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son. And that is so powerful. So again, we've participated in the sense of his deity, that he's God, eternal, almighty. I mean, and you can't say enough about him. But now, because of him coming in flesh, in likeness of sinful flesh, yet never sinning, he has every right to redeem any part of our being and also grant us the same power and authority to live even as he lived with his Father. So saints, when you come to understand this, man, there's no way around it. And the church is going to have an awakening like never before. And for such a time as this, you and I are walking not just with him, but in him, in us. Awaken to that, and let me tell you, your walk with the Lord will radically change. You begin to see people as he sees them. So again, as we were saying earlier, we look at God in the Old Testament as a some, angry God, some God of vengeance, some God that just wants, looking for someone to pour his wrath upon. Yet, he chose to come as the Son of God, same time as the Son of Man. Like him, there's no other. Therefore, if the same Spirit that raised him from the dead dwells in you, he will quicken this mortal body. Stop being a prison for Holy Spirit. Say, Lord, whatever you want me to do, lead me. Your son is the example. He's my elder brother. And your desire that you've always had from all eternity, you've chosen me to have the revelation where no one had ever seen the Father. You sent your Son. And the one that is in the bosom of the Father has declared him, has manifested him. And he chose to give me that revelation. How can I allow to imprison the one who died? Well, first of all, who lived, died, and resurrected as us. Saints, he's a good God, amazing God, loving God. So all of this, what people talk about of God being in the old covenant, you can't talk about that. You cannot use that language. We're under a new covenant between the Father and the Son. And through that circle of John 14:20, you and I have been invited. So now, what will you do with that? Till next time, saints, good to be with you. Again, every Wednesday, House of Many Waters, 7:30. Again, Brother Henry, good to be with you, brother. And till next time, like I said, so sorry for any inconvenience this past Sunday. All I can say is you should have been here. All right. Don't forget this coming Sunday, 15th, 6:30 to 9, our second youth worship night. God bless.